The history of France, from the French Revolution till WW2. Brief. France has a rich history, but its history from the French Revolution till World War II stands out the most, providing rich insights to historians, students, researchers, military strategists, and the general public. If this historic period is removed, the whole of European history becomes meaningless. The expensive royal style of the king and queen, the cost of war, unfair taxation, the growth of the Enlightenment, growing contempt in the Second and Third Estates, low agricultural yield, high inflation, the financial crisis of the 1780s, the Spanish Civil Wars, and Karl Marx's philosophy of communism provided the breeding grounds for the French Revolution and the events that took place afterwards until WW2. This video is aimed at unfurling the history of France that took place from the French Revolution till WW2. Stay tuned with us to reap the rich benefits of this video. Detail. These conditions led the people to overthrow the monarchy and seize governmental power. The French Revolution lasted for a decade, from 1789 till 1799. The main event that provided impetus to the revolution occurred when the revolutionaries stormed the Bastille prison on that fateful day, July 14th, 1789. This period of revolution was a consistent struggle amongst the peasantry, workers, nobility, bourgeoisie, and oligarchs. For 10 years, France pulsed with the unprecedented stress of the revolution. At the beginning of the revolution, the common people, workers, peasants who belonged to the Third Estate, established the National Assembly, demanded certain inalienable rights from King Louis XVI, and took over the whole country. This period led to the so-called Reign of Terror that lasted from 1793 to 1794, during which the state sanctioned mass violence and mass executions as the revolutionary government ordered to arrest, maim, and execute people deemed anti-revolution. This official policy of terror inflamed the tide of revolution further. Robespierre led the National Convention and Committee of Public Safety and called for the rule of terror. Laws were passed and thousands of people were executed, including Queen Marie Antoinette and many political rivals of Maximilien Robespierre, arguably the most powerful figure of the National Assembly. But revolutionaries put an end to the Reign of Terror, and afterwards, a new government was formed called the Directory by historians. The French Revolution resulted in a thorough transformation of the social and political fabrics of France, practically unprecedented in European history. It put a permanent end to the French monarchy, feudalism, enshrined human rights and law, and deprived the Catholic Church from political power. It set the stage for new ideas, democracy, good governance, and basic human rights protection. It influenced all the nations of Europe and the modern world in unprecedented ways. However, France was destined to experience yet another period of turmoil, instability, huge victory, and catastrophic failure. This following period is dominated by Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon put an end to the revolution in 1799 after he overthrew the revolutionary government and established the French consulate, rapidly consolidating his power and eventually becoming Emperor of the French. After he held the reins of the empire firmly in his grip, he started casting his sights on Europe to take it into the fold of France and establish his hegemony as unrestrained and controlled leader of a total European empire. He rose to fame and prominence through his experience in the military. He became a noted war hero throughout the revolutionary period. He had a sharp and shrewd soul, ambitious to the extreme, and a skillful military strategist. During the initial period, he successfully led war against multiple coalitions of European nations and expanded his empire. Under his fierce leadership, France experienced the Napoleonic Wars. These were a series of major global conflicts, pitting the French Empire and its allies against Great Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. These wars were fought for the European supremacy that Napoleon desired. With state power in his hands, Napoleon set out to wage war against every power in Europe. Under him, Napoleon invaded and occupied the Iberian holdings of Spain and Portugal, installed his brother as King of Spain. This led to a protracted guerrilla campaign by Spanish and Portuguese forces. French commanders lost the war and thus rule over the country. There were many coalition wars that France fought under Napoleon, but the Sixth Coalition proved a fierce one, as Russia, Prussia, and Austria joined hands and paid France a heavy blow. The period that lasted from 1808 to 1814 for 6 years saw and brought multifaceted challenges for France in the wake of the wars of the coalition and political tensions. France faced England as an enemy, and Napoleon considered her as a threat to his designs of domination. He stopped other countries from having economic and trade relations with England. Despite this, England had a thriving agricultural sector and enough natural resources that the economic blockade actually harmed France herself. France under Napoleon was destined to see and experience 3 major events in this warmongering scenario. This experience emanated from the military blunders Napoleon began to commit later into his rule. While France was engaged in the central parts of Western Europe, he cast his eyes towards Russia, the invasion of which cost him the empire that he so wanted to expand. This was a freezing winter, and his expedition proved suicidal. France was also defeated in the Battle of Leipzig and led to the capture of Paris in 1814. The main events and results of the war culminated in the defeat of Napoleon, first at the Battle of Leipzig, and eventually Paris in 1814 was besieged. Napoleon desired to show French supremacy over Europe, but the Battle of Waterloo, in which Napoleon's forces were defeated by the British and Prussian armies, proved to be the last nail in his coffin. Aside from these defeats, most of the European wars fought by Napoleon were won and positioned him to build a large empire that ruled over continental Europe before its collapse in 1815. After the Napoleon Empire ended, France entered into yet another new phase of its history. France returned to a monarchical system of governments, where Louis XVIII did his best to balance the tense situation following Napoleon's defeat. He granted amnesty to his enemies with the hope to begin over again for France. In 1824, Louis XVIII died and was succeeded by Charles X. Charles was hard reactionary, who hated all the changes that took place in the defeated and economically fragile country. He considered himself as the spiritually appointed Emperor of France and attempted to put an end to liberalism and democratic principles. Louis-Philippe succeeded Charles, and a new phase of king's coronation commenced. Many national events occurred after him and kept changing the political and social dynamics of the French people. The next most important phase of French history occurred with the commencement of WW2, only 30 years after the global tragedy of WW1. France was reluctant to join WW2, owing to its turbulent history from the French Revolution till WW2. However, when Germany invaded country after country and Hitler was hell-bent upon challenging every existing power for world hegemony, Germany invaded Poland, whose independence was guaranteed by the French. Poland and France were allies during the interwar period from 1919 to 1939. As a result, France declared war on Germany and joined the forces of the Allies. From 1939 to 1940, the French Third Republic was at war with Germany. In 1940, Nazi Germany crushed the French forces in the Battle of France and became an army of occupation over the north and west of French territory. This was the important period when General Charles de Gaulle came to the front to register his role in French history. He applied the strategy of establishing a French government in exile based in London to gather legitimacy and control of what was left of the French colonial empire while receiving help from France's allies. He, to a major extent, succeeded in enlisting the support of French African colonies, and later somewhat succeeded in bringing together the disparate Maquis colonial regiments, legionnaires, expatriate fighters, and communist snipers under the Free French forces into the Allied chain of command. This strategy worked, and eventually German forces were routed from France with the help of the Allies. Hitler invaded France and succeeded to overrun northern France, also forcing the British forces off the continent. France, for the first time in history, surrendered to a foreign power, and Germany was in position to enslave 2 million French prisoners of war in forced labor camps in Germany. General de Gaulle formed a joint front with the Allied powers, and the French forces of the interior played a key role in liberating France from German domination. The US, Britain, and the Free French forces succeeded in liberating France together. However, Germany's destiny was ill-fated and had to be defeated. This gave France leverage. De Gaulle was recognized by the US, Britain, and the Soviet Union as France's de facto head of state, who later on became the democratically elected president of France. Recruitment in liberated France led to an expansion of French naval power. By the end of the war in Europe in May 1945, France fielded 1,250,000 troops, 10 divisions of which were fighting in Germany. An expeditionary corps was created to liberate French Indochina and was then occupied by Japan. During the course of the war, a total of 212,000 French military men died, of which 92,000 were killed before the end of the campaign in 1940, 58,000 that lasted from 1940 to 1945 in other campaigns. 24,000 lost their lives while serving in the French resistance, and a further 38,000 lost their lives while serving with the German army. In sum, it can be concluded that from the French Revolution until the WW2 period, France experienced a time of global historic significance. Bad governance, injustice, and authoritarianism inflamed the French Revolution. The people stormed the Bastille and propelled the revolution into full swing. The Reign of Terror caused massive bloodshed, and thousands of people were executed. The people overthrew the government and installed their own. Reactionary forces caused extreme insecurity and socio-political instability in the country. It became a war between the upper and lower classes. Amidst the chaos, Napoleon rose to power and started an invasion of practically every nation in Europe to establish and lead his empire. He fought the Napoleonic Wars, and eventually, every country turned against him. He was finally defeated by the combined forces of the enemy at the Battle of Waterloo. His blunders and personal god complex caused tremendous damage to the nation. After he died, France entered a new phase with the restoration of the monarchy. The revolutionary forces were alive, and the arrogant mentality of the ruling class caused another revolution, causing the country to go from one phase of instability to another. World War II broke out as France intervened when its ally Poland was invaded by Nazi Germany. France was invaded and fully occupied by Germany, but later on, France managed to regain its independence after the defeat of Germany. General de Gaulle rose to power. He brought constitutional reforms and the presidential form of government that we see in France today. Since then, France has been the Fifth Republic, a democratic country. In fact, the period from the French Revolution till the end of WW2 holds much significance in the history of France. Throughout, the country was bogged down in various crises, but eventually started the journey to democracy. Now, France has a presidential democratic form of government, and in every walk of life, it is going from strength to strength. Hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. You can also follow us on our official Facebook page and Instagram for keeping up to date on the latest and freshest news on world events. So please, follow and subscribe.